What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks onto a morning show set and refuses to play along with disrespect? In just 26 seconds of dismissive comments, a beloved host would lose control of her own show and spark the most shocking exit in morning television history. The Good Morning America studio felt different that morning. Denzel Washington sat across from Lara Spencer, flanked by the other panel members George Stephanopoulos and Robin Roberts. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and millions of viewers were tuning in for what they thought would be a typical celebrity interview. Denzel had come to discuss his latest film, a passion project he had spent years developing. But from the moment he sat down, something felt off. Lara Spencer opened with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So Denzel, we're so thrilled to have you here. I have to say though, another movie about struggle and perseverance? Don't you ever want to do something, I don't know, fun?" The question landed like a slap. Robin Roberts shifted uncomfortably in her seat. George looked down at his notes. Denzel paused, his expression unchanging. "Fun? You think telling stories about the human experience isn't fun?" "Oh, come on, you know what I mean," Lara continued, waving her hand dismissively. "It's just so heavy all the time. We get it. You're serious. But wouldn't you rather be in something people actually want to watch on a Friday night?" "People do want to watch stories that matter," Denzel replied, his voice calm but firm. "Stories that reflect real life, real struggle, real triumph." Lara laughed, but it was sharp. "Right, but let's be honest. How many of your quote-unquote important films actually make money compared to, say, a Marvel movie?" Robin Roberts interjected quickly. "I think what Denzel brings to cinema is invaluable, and his films have certainly resonated with audiences worldwide." But Lara wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her tone shifting to something almost condescending. "Look, Denzel, I'm sure this movie is very meaningful to you and your community. But do you really think mainstream America is going to connect with it?" The studio went silent. George Stephanopoulos cleared his throat. "Lara, I think we should—" "Your community?" Denzel repeated slowly. His eyes locked onto Lara's. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Lara's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "I just mean, it's a very specific kind of film, for a specific kind of audience." "And what kind of audience is that?" Denzel's voice was still controlled, but there was steel underneath. "You're being overly sensitive," Lara said, flipping her hair back. "I'm just saying that not every film needs to be a history lesson or a lecture. Sometimes people want to escape, not be reminded of difficult things." Robin tried again. "I think there's room for all types of cinema, and Denzel has proven, time and time again, that meaningful storytelling can also be incredibly successful." "Robin, please," Lara said with a wave of her hand. "Let's not pretend that his movies perform like the big blockbusters. I'm just asking a fair question." Denzel sat back in his chair, studying Lara carefully. "A fair question. You think it's fair to suggest that films about the human condition, about real experiences, about history and dignity, are somehow less valuable than movies about superheroes?" "I didn't say less valuable," Lara protested. "I said less popular. There's a difference." "Is there?" Denzel asked. "Because it sounds to me like you're saying that the stories I choose to tell, the experiences I choose to honor, don't matter to mainstream America. That's what you just said." George tried to redirect. "Why don't we talk about the actual film? Denzel, can you tell us about your character?" But Denzel's attention remained fixed on Lara. "No, I want to understand what Lara means. Because she said my community. She said specific audience. I want her to explain exactly what she means by that." Lara shifted in her seat, her confidence wavering. "I think you're twisting my words." "I'm repeating your words," Denzel corrected. "Your exact words." "This is ridiculous," Lara said, her voice rising slightly. "I'm trying to have a conversation about box office appeal, and you're making it into something it's not. Am I? Denzel leaned forward now. Because, from where I'm sitting, you've dismissed my work as not fun, questioned whether mainstream America would connect with it, referred to some vague community I apparently represent, and suggested that meaningful cinema is somehow less worthy of attention. Did I miss anything? The other panelists were frozen. Robin looked like she wanted to crawl under the desk. George was staring at the ceiling. Lara tried to laugh it off. Wow, okay. I didn't realize we couldn't have an honest discussion about the entertainment industry without someone getting offended. Offended, Denzel repeated. That's an interesting word choice. Yes, offended, Lara doubled down. I ask simple questions about your career choices, and you've turned this into an interrogation. You didn't ask about my career choices, Denzel said, his voice rising for the first time. You diminished my career choices. You suggested that telling stories about real people, real history, real pain, and real triumph is somehow niche. That it's not for mainstream America. That it's only for my community. I never said that, Lara insisted. You said exactly that, Denzel shot back. Everyone watching heard you say exactly that. Robin finally found her voice. I think we're all a little tense this morning. Why don't we take a breath and... No, Denzel said firmly. No, we're not taking a breath. We're going to finish this conversation. Lara crossed her arms. Fine. What do you want me to say? I want you to explain what you meant, Denzel said. I want you to tell me, and everyone watching, what you meant by my community. What you meant by specific audience. What you meant by mainstream America. Because those words have meaning, Lara. They have history. And you don't get to throw them around carelessly and then act like I'm the problem for calling it out. This is insane, Lara muttered, looking to her co-hosts for support. George remained silent. Robin looked away. It's not insane, Denzel said. What's insane is sitting on national television and being told that the work I've dedicated my life to, work that honors the experiences and struggles and triumphs of real people, is somehow not good enough for mainstream America. What's insane is being told that stories about dignity and perseverance are niche. Lara's face was reddening. I never said not good enough. Stop putting words in my mouth. Then what did you say? Denzel challenged. Explain it to me. Explain it to everyone watching. I said, Lara began, her voice tight, that your films tend to be very serious and very focused on specific themes that may not appeal to everyone. That's not controversial. That's not offensive. That's a fact. Specific themes, Denzel said slowly. Like what? Human dignity? Justice? Resilience? Love? Family? Which of those specific themes do you think mainstream America can't connect with? You're twisting everything I say, Lara snapped. I'm asking you to clarify everything you say, Denzel corrected. There's a difference. The tension in the studio was suffocating. The crew behind the cameras didn't know where to look. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to figure out how to salvage the segment. Look, Lara said, trying a different approach. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let's start over. No, Denzel said simply. We're not starting over. You said what you said. You meant what you meant. And now you're trying to backtrack because you realize how it sounds. How it sounds! Lara's voice was sharp again. You're the one making this difficult. I'm making this difficult? Denzel's eyebrows raised. I came here to talk about a film I'm proud of. A film about real people and real history. And you've spent the entire time dismissing it, questioning its value, and suggesting it's not for mainstream audiences. I'm not the one making this difficult. Robin tried once more. Denzel, we absolutely value the work you do. I think Lara was just trying to... Robin, with all respect, don't defend what she said, Denzel interrupted gently. You and I both know what she was implying. George knows it too. Everyone watching knows it. George finally spoke up. I think emotions are running high. Maybe we should... Maybe we should what? Denzel asked. Pretend this didn't happen. Move on to the next segment. Smile for the cameras. Lara stood up abruptly. I don't have to sit here and be accused of things I didn't say. Sit down, Denzel said, his voice commanding. You're not walking away from this. Excuse me? Lara looked genuinely shocked. You heard me, Denzel said, standing as well. You don't get to say what you said and then walk away. You owe everyone an explanation. I don't owe you anything, Lara shot back. You owe the viewers honesty, Denzel said. You owe them clarity. You owe them the courage to stand by your words or the integrity to admit you were wrong. Lara's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. That's what I thought, Denzel said quietly. The silence stretched on. Robin and George looked at each other, unsure of what to do. Finally, Lara found her voice. I think you're being incredibly unfair. I was trying to have a professional conversation about the entertainment industry, and you've turned it into a personal attack. A professional conversation, Denzel repeated. Is that what you call questioning whether mainstream America can connect with stories about human dignity? Is that what you call dismissing meaningful cinema as too serious? Is that what you call referring to some vague community I apparently represent? Yes, Lara insisted. That's exactly what I call it. It's called being realistic about the industry. No, Denzel said, shaking his head. It's called revealing your biases. It's called showing everyone exactly what you think about certain kinds of stories and certain kinds of people. How dare you? Lara's voice was shaking now. How dare you accuse me of bias? How dare I? Denzel's laugh was humorless. How dare you sit there and tell me that stories about struggle and perseverance and triumph are niche? How dare you suggest that mainstream America won't connect with them? How dare you reduce decades of meaningful cinema to not fun enough? Robin stood up, placing a hand on Denzel's arm. Please, let's all just take a moment. Denzel looked at Robin, his expression softening slightly. Robin, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this needed to be said. This needed to be called out. I understand, Robin said gently. I do, but maybe we can... There's no maybe, Denzel said. Either she admits what she said was wrong, or I'm done here. All eyes turned to Lara. She stood frozen, her face a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Well, Denzel prompted. I'm not apologizing for asking legitimate questions, Lara said finally. Denzel nodded slowly. Then we're done. He reached up and unclipped his microphone, the small gesture somehow thunderous in the silent studio. Denzel, please, George said, standing now too. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, Denzel said, his voice calm again. She said what she said. She meant what she meant, and she's not willing to acknowledge it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's okay. You're overreacting, Lara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Denzel looked at her one last time. No, Lara, I'm reacting appropriately to disrespect. That's something you clearly don't understand. He placed the microphone on his chair and turned toward the exit. Wait, Robin called out. Denzel, please don't leave like this. He paused and looked back at her. Robin, you're good people. You know what happened here. Don't let anyone pretend otherwise. Then he looked at George. You too, George. You saw it. You heard it. Don't let this get swept under the rug. George nodded silently, his face grave. Finally, Denzel's gaze returned to Lara. I hope you think about this. I hope you think about what you said and why you said it. And I hope someday you understand why it was wrong. I didn't do anything wrong, Lara insisted, but her voice was barely a whisper. Keep telling yourself that, Denzel said. Then he turned and walked off the set. The camera operators didn't know whether to keep filming or cut away. The producers were shouting in earpieces. Robin had her hand over her mouth. George was staring at the empty chair where Denzel had been sitting, and Lara Spencer stood alone in the center of the studio, surrounded by her co-hosts who wouldn't meet her eyes, facing cameras that had captured every word. "We're going to commercial," George finally said, his voice tight. As the studio lights shifted and the live feed cut away, Lara slowly sat back down. She looked at Robin, then at George. "I didn't," she started. "I wasn't..." But neither of them responded. They both knew what had happened. They had heard every word, every implication, every dismissive comment. Behind the scenes, the crew was already talking. Phones were being pulled out. Social media was about to explode. Because millions of people had just watched one of Hollywood's most respected actors refuse to accept disrespect on live television. They had watched him stand up, speak truth, and walk away with his dignity intact. And they had watched a host learn the hard way that some people won't. Play along when you try to diminish their life's work. The commercial break felt like it lasted forever. When the cameras came back, Denzel's chair sat empty. A stark reminder of what happens when ego meets integrity. Robin spoke first, her voice measured. "We apologize for the tension in that last segment. These conversations can be difficult, but they're important." George nodded. "We'll be right back with more Good Morning America." But everyone watching knew the show was already over. The real moment had happened. The truth had been spoken. And no amount of smooth transitions could erase what had just unfolded. In the makeup room backstage, Denzel was already gathering his things. A producer rushed in, breathless. "Mr. Washington, please, can we talk about this?" Denzel looked at the young man, his expression not unkind. "There's nothing to talk about. What happened out there? That's the conversation. That's what needed to happen. But we can do another segment," the producer pleaded. "We can address it properly." "You just did address it," Denzel said. "The whole country saw how it was addressed." "I mean, we can fix it," the producer said desperately. Denzel paused at the door. "Son, some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to be learned from. I hope your network learns from this." Then he walked out, leaving behind a studio in chaos and a host who would spend the rest of the day trying to explain what everyone had already seen with their own eyes. Back on set, as the show continued with forced normalcy, Lara's hands were shaking. She smiled for the camera, read her lines, pretended everything was fine. But Robin and George both knew. The viewers knew. The crew knew. Something had shifted that morning. A line had been crossed and then defended. Disrespect had been called out in real time, without hesitation, without apology. And Denzel Washington had walked off the set of Good Morning America with his head held high, having refused to let anyone diminish the work he had spent his entire life honoring. The empty chair remained visible in every shot for the rest of the show. A silent testimony to what happens when you underestimate someone's dedication to their craft, their community, and their truth. As the show finally ended and the cameras stopped rolling, Lara sat in that chair, staring at the space where Denzel had been. "I didn't mean it like that," she said to no one in particular. But meaning and impact are two different things. And impact is what the world remembers. Robin touched her shoulder briefly before walking away. George gathered his notes in silence and left the set. And Lara Spencer sat alone, learning a lesson that should have been learned long ago. Respect is not optional, dignity is not debatable, and some people will never compromise either, no matter how bright the lights or how big the stage. The studio emptied slowly, crew members avoiding eye contact with Lara as they packed up equipment. The energy had completely drained from the space that had been so alive with tension just minutes before. Outside the building, Denzel climbed into a waiting car. His phone was already buzzing with messages of support, but he didn't need them. He knew what he had done was right. He had stood up not just for himself, but for every artist who has been told their work is too serious, too specific, too much. For everyone who has been asked to explain why stories about real experiences matter. For everyone who has been made to feel that their truth is somehow niche. The car pulled away from the studio, leaving behind a morning show that would never quite recover its polish. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes the most important conversation is the one that makes everyone uncomfortable. Denzel Washington had done both that morning, and millions of people had watched him do it with grace, strength, and unshakable conviction. That empty chair would be remembered long after the commercial breaks were forgotten. That confrontation would be replayed long after the smooth transitions faded from memory. Because truth has a way of cutting through all the production value in the world. And dignity has a way of shining even brighter when someone tries to dim it. Good Morning America would go on, but it would never quite be the same. And Lara Spencer would carry that morning with her, a reminder that words have weight and consequences have meaning. In the end, it wasn't about who won or who lost. It was about what was said and what was stood for. And on that morning, in front of millions of viewers, Denzel Washington stood for something that should never have been questioned in the first place. The value of meaningful storytelling, the importance of dignity, and the right to call out disrespect wherever it appears. The car disappeared into traffic. The studio lights dimmed. The show was over. But the lesson would echo for much longer.